Honestly, the longest part about making pinwheels, like stuffed pork tenderloins, as some people call them, like pinwheels, is waiting for like the peppers and your like spinach filling to cook. It really does take a lot longer than you think it does. It only takes like 25 minutes for the tenderloin to like finish cooking completely in the oven, but it feels like it takes like 20 minutes, like half an hour for your like vegetables to like properly soften. And I don't know if it helps or not, but like partway through the cooking process, I'll throw in like a little bit of water to help steam them over and like put a lid on it. I don't know if that helps it, but it feels like it helps in my brain, and I guess that's just as good. I do not make my stuffed pork tenderloin, my pinwheel, the traditional way. Traditionally, you would like butterfly it, and then you would like butterfly those two halves, but I think that is like too difficult. And so, what I do is I cut down the side of the pork tenderloin, making sure not to cut all the way through your pork tenderloin, and then I flip it open. And then I repeat that same cut to that thicker inside section that's left over. And it will actually fold open relatively simply like a book. And then, as long as you don't cut all the way through it, you'll be able to just roll it back up and tie it back together. And you will have like an open pork tenderloin just like this with only 3 cuts. It's not as even, it's not as pretty, but it does work a lot easier in like the common household kitchen. I recommend everybody make stuffed pork tenderloins. They are really good and a better use of the meat than just like roasting it in the oven. A lot of the times it comes out like less flavorful than you were expecting and a lot harder and denser because of like that harsher cooking technique. It's a lot more enjoyable like this. And it's even better if you have like a powdered gravy packet and you just whip that up to like pour over the top of it. It's really good. When rolling your pork tenderloin back up, you should always ensure that the fat cap, the white fatty meat section, is always on the outside. Otherwise, you cannot properly sear it, and it will turn kind of chewy and a little bit gummy if you leave it on the inside of the meat, and that's not as pleasurable. I just use like common cotton twine to re-roll the pork tenderloin. It is best to not use anything like artificial fibers or with any sort of like color or treatment it dyes because it might leach off and go into your meat and that would be like unsafe for human consumption. So just like buy like any untreated like white fiber cord at like a craft store or at the Walmart, and that's what I use. My best tip for making pinwheel stuffed pork tenderloins is that a lot of people put more filling than they think they need, and that's why they have such a hard time rolling it back up and like trussing it properly. They have like the filling spilling out everywhere, they can't get it tied properly. It's a lot less than you think you need. So you can't put the stuffing back because the pork tenderloin is raw. So what stuffing you do put in there, do not try to like keep it and like set it aside. That's not sanitary. So be careful, spread it out evenly, and put less than you think you need, like half as much as you think you want. That way you can get it properly rolled back up. Oh, excuse me. It's always really important to pre-cook your stuffing. That way it is properly pasteurized when you put it into the pork tenderloin. Because a lot of the time, the stuffing does not cook in the middle properly, it will keep the internal temperature of the pork tenderloin too low, and the outside will cook properly, but the inside will still be raw, or the vegetables will start to leak a lot of moisture, making the entire pork tenderloin really soggy, and the bottom won't like brown or be crispy or nice at all. And take a really long section of your twine, like much longer than you think you need, because it does take more twine than you think you need, and you'll just be able to cut the rest off anyway and just discard it. It is better to have like a longer single piece of thread rather than trying to like take the spool and like wrap it around the pork tenderloin, because then you'll get like raw pork juice on the spool and like it'll just feel unsanitary. So like just take a really long piece of cord, like as long as your like arm span really. Oops. Just like a really long piece. And you'll be able to truss it properly. It's a lot easier than it looks. I use a bunch of like overhand knots, I think they're called. Just take your time, space them evenly, and try to pull them as tight as you can. That way this filling doesn't spill out, but it's not that difficult. You'll get it with a couple practices. See, there we go. I always try to get it like that butcher's way with the one singular thread going all the way down the center because I think it looks a lot prettier. But it's really not as hard as it looks. But it tastes really good. And you just cut that extra piece of thread off. That way it doesn't like burn in the oven or on the pan. Because that's just not safe. Like, I guess it is a fire hazard. I prefer not to salt the outside of my pork tenderloin because of like I more heavily season the stuffing of the pork tenderloin, and so I don't salt the outside of it. That way, it doesn't become like too salty as a whole. You want the whole thing to be like homogenous in your mouth, and so if you add like salted filling to like salted pork, it becomes really salty in your mouth. So do not salt the outside of your pork tenderloin. Instead, you will be adding like all of the seasonings that you neglected in the stuffing. So like your rosemary, your thyme, your garlic powder, your paprika. I think that like paprika powder and like cayenne pepper are the most important parts of a good piece of pork, because sometimes like when you try to like brown or like fry pork, it can stay really pale, but paprika darkens really easily in a pan, and so it tricks your brain and tricks your eye into thinking that the pork is more charred, more crispy, that Maillard reaction. It disguises the like paleness that pork can have sometimes, and so paprika is actually the most important seasoning. I guess there we go, broken up a little bit. And because we did not add any like pork stuffing back to our reserved vegetables, you can keep like the onion, I mean, not the onions, the peppers and the spinach mix, and you can use that on like sandwiches or something, or if you're making a stew, you can add it to that. Like, you could, if you want it, just throw those peppers into your hamburger helper. I'm not going to do that because I added the spinach to it, so I'm probably going to use it on like a grilled chicken sandwich for like tomorrow or something. But it's really important that you keep the pork separate from the filling. That way you can use the filling for something else later. And like I said, you want to make sure that the white fat cap remains on the outside of the meat when you roll it back up. When adding your pork tenderloin into the pan, you want to put it fat side down initially. That way the hottest point of the pan, the initial point of the pan, sears the fat cap properly. And when you go to add it into the oven, you want to make sure that the fat cap is actually pointed upwards towards your heat element. That way it continues to like render and crisp up the fat properly. I am a lifelong subscriber of the America's Test Kitchen. And so we will be cooking our pork tenderloin to an internal doneness of 145. Some of you might think that sounds like a bit low and a bit rare for pork, but I promise you it is fine. It will make your pork tenderloin a lot more tender and a lot easier to chew, because a lot of people will push it to that like 160, 170 mark, and it's really hard and really dry. And with pork tenderloin specifically, it is safe to eat it at that 145 mark. I am a lifelong watcher of America's Test Kitchen. When I was a little boy, I would watch it like all Saturday long in the back room of the apartment we used to have. With my oven particularly, we will be putting it at 425 for 25 minutes, and that will get us our 145 internal doneness. But every oven is different, so it's important for you to explore your own cooking and see where your oven lies. Thickening, doing whatever it does. One other tip that I can give people to make the pork tenderloin better is to cut the pieces thicker than you think you want to. Like, cut between like the rope, how you trussed it. Because if you cut the slices too thin, it's more likely to like break in half because of like how it's spooled back together. It'll like unroll itself if the pieces aren't thick enough, or the filling will fall out if the piece isn't thick enough. So put half as much filling as you think you need, but cut the pieces twice as thick as you want them. And I'll add like a little bit of water into the bottom of the pan too, to get up that last little bit of fond off the bottom of the pan. You know what? Oh, there is. I have a package of powdered brown gravy. I'm just gonna mix this up in the bottom of the pan to get that like fond off and get those other like pork drippings and flavor into the broth. And if you are repeating the steps as I do them, always be careful around the cast iron pan when it's hot on the stove or when you've just taken it out the oven. The only thing more dangerous in a kitchen than a falling knife is a hot cast iron pan. That thing will burn you the second you touch it. Be very careful around it. And here we are. Stuffed tenderloin, pinwheel, and beef stroganoff. As always, thank you so much for joining me, Outsiders and In-Betweeners, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Cameron Harris, and I am running for mayor of Chicago in the 2027 election cycle. I will be so happy to see you all in our beautiful streets. Have a good night, everybody.